Els podcasts del Mercat de les Flors. Jan Martens is a lover of words and numbers, yet not from the canonical perspective, but with his focus on the cracks, the places where the light escapes. In this interview you're about to hear, we're accompanied by some music he has brought back from obscurity, such as pieces by Cherry Knight, Erin Gee, Maya S.K. Radke, and of course Elisabeth Chojnacka, side by side with mainstream artists like Kate Bush and Alanis Morissette. Through his generosity, Jan Martens shows us that an artist is nothing more and nothing less than an eternal learner, that a choreography can teach us about democracy, and that dance is a path to knowledge, even without words. I understand that you studied literature and German languages, and eventually you happened to choose a language that has no words.
Yes.
And I wonder, how did it happen?
Since I was a small kid, I really delved into books, and I was really a reader. I still am very much a reader. And I think that's why initially when I was 18 and had to make a choice, I was drawn to Germanic languages. I studied indeed Dutch and English for 1 year at the university. But my interest in dance became already a bit earlier, not so much earlier. But when I was 17, 18, we had a really great Dutch teacher, and Dutch is my maternal language. And from her we had to see 5 theater performances. And my boyfriend at that time took me to see Jan Fabre, As Long as the World Needs a Warrior Soul. And that was my first encounter with contemporary dance, you could say, which completely blew me away. I think because at that time I was really not at ease in my body. I was not feeling comfortable in my body, being homosexual and not out of the closet yet. And on stage, as was a lot the case in performances with Jan Fabre, there were very beautiful, strong people, naked. It was a show with a lot of bodily fluids, like with blood and chocolate, and there was a shower on stage, and it was really impressive to see people completely in their power, completely unembarrassed, completely at ease with who they were. And I think that was something which really struck me. And it's actually also only in that moment that I discovered that it can be a job. Like being an actor or a dancer can be a job. And I'm talking now about 2001, 2002. So it was also the first years of internet, which made that I could research it. And so very quickly I also bumped into videos of Rosas Dans Rosas, which struck me also very, very hard, but very differently with Fabre, because with Fabre I understood why it touched me. With Rosas I couldn't understand, because it felt, it was Phase actually, it was not Rosas Dans Rosas, it was Phase, the video I saw, because it felt like pure mathematics, like no emotion. At that time, I perceived it as no emotion. So it was weird that it got a really emotional response, because I thought, and that's also what I saw at Fabre, like if you want to feel something, you need to go for the big emotion. But that was not the case. And I think those two moments, which followed each other very slowly, shortly after each other, I think really formed also me as a choreographer and as a dancer in the years after.
And you started dancing just then?
I started dancing just then, indeed. When I was 15, I started following theater classes in the academy in my village, because I had a friend who came really from a art-loving family, which in my family was not really the case. And then when I saw these pieces, my interest in dance was awakened, and I also remember being at home alone in my room, listening to music like Lamb and Hooverphonic and Tori Amos, and starting to move and sweat and do strange repetitive movements and feeling good with that. And so then I started to take classes, contemporary classes. When I was at the university in Ghent studying Dutch and English, I also started to take ballet classes for adults. And then in April, which is before the end of my first university year, I decided that this studying was not for me. But it never... I never thought of going to go to a dance education, but then I started doing other jobs. I started like baking fries in the student restaurant, and also they're saying like, yeah, but this cannot be for the rest of my year, so what am I going to do? And then I had a friend who studied at the Tilburg Dance Academy, Fontis Dance Academy in the Netherlands. And she said, why don't you come and try? Because for boys it's a lot easier to get in. And so I did, and I got in, indeed.
Out on the winding, windy moors, we'd roll and fall in green. You had a temper like my jealousy, too hard, too greedy.
There's a very big difference in dance history in Belgium or in the Netherlands. In Belgium we had the 80s, the Flemish wave with the Keersmaker and Van de Keibus, Platel, all that, while in Netherlands still nowadays, even though it's changing as well, but still the big companies are in a neoclassical vibe, NDT, Introdance, Capino, National Ballet. And those were all companies which I did not see myself dancing in. So I think also in that first year of studying dance, I also started to realize like, maybe I will have to create my own possibilities and my new opportunities. Also thinking that a company like Rosas would be too difficult to get into. As I saw in school also, that I was really lagging behind with technical classes. So then in school I started to make little works. We had like a carte blanche, like open evenings, and we could say like, I want to show something, and then I showed a weird solo of 10 minutes, and then things started to go, and since then I started making and never stopped, actually.
And for what you said, it seems that dance also helped you to get out the closet, right? Mm-hmm. Was it a parallel journey?
Yes, it was a parallel journey. I think a lot happened at the same time. I think in February of that year, I came out of the closet. In April, I quit university, and at June, I was taken into the dance academy. So in 4 months' time, my parents quite had to receive a lot of changes, a lot of big messages on the table, which was not easy for them, but in the end, they were very supportive, and they paid the fee to go to school, and they are very proud now. But it was, I think, a lot of surprises for them. I was also the first one of my family to go to university, and then to give up after 10 months was like quite a a disappointment at first hand. But now, of course, if you see, I think they're happy they allowed me to go to dance school with how it went after. Yeah.
In your Instagram, I saw kind of choreography and kind of dance. Why kind of? Why not straight choreography and dance?
Good question. I think it has to do with wanting to broaden up what that could be. I'm kind of dancing instead of I'm dancing. I think it has to do also in 2014 I created a solo Ode to the Attempt, which was a quite playful solo in which I had a list of 13 attempts which I typed and which were projected on screen, which then I executed one by one.
And you succeeded?
Well, yes, because they're attempts, and I think that was the attempt can be very interesting as well. The trying, I think doubt is also a quality I love to work with in movement. I think a doubtful quality can be something very, very beautiful.
Okay. And I also saw that in your Instagram there's a part, one of the lines is books, and there was Mercè Rodoreda.
Yes, I know.
How did you come to Mercè Rodoreda, and what did you like about her?
I came to Mercè Rodoreda because I read about her in a book by Claire Louise Bennett, English writer, extremely beautiful book. And in one of those texts, she writes about her study of literature and how that only after graduating, she discovered the female canon, and she lists all names I didn't know. And because I like to learn stuff, I copy that list and I check what is there to find. And in the catalog of the public library I'm a member of, they had books by Mercè Rodoreda, and Mercè Rodoreda was one of those names on the list. And the first I read was Garden at the Sea, and then I read Death and Spring, which was like, I don't know how to describe it. There is something very narrative, but something very weird, something very alienating.
I feel there's a connection with Belgium because of language, actually. Because both are countries that have several languages. And I think most of countries which have different languages are good in dance. Because it's a common place where we can meet.
Interesting.
I don't know. I mean, it's not scientific, but
no.
I think there's something about it. You also define yourself as an rhythmic dancer. Mm-hmm. And could you explain more of that? Where does melody remain then?
Yeah, I think melody is of course super important, and but I'm somebody who very instantly works with rhythm. If I hear music, I'm carried by the rhythm, because a rhythm is a lot more repetitive than the melody, maybe. And I'm a very repetitive dancer.
In what sense?
In the sense that there's a lot of repetition in my movements, in the works that I propose. I think it has to do also with the fact that I was a runner. As a kid, I was running a lot. I was like doing athletics, and remembering like also long distances, field running. And that brought me also in this, they call it the runner's high. I know that because of the repetitive motion. And that's something I think colors my work very much, sometimes very clearly, like in The Dog Days Are Over, which we presented here in 17, I think, or 16.
The two pieces that you're bringing now in the Mercat de les Flors are related to sound, actually. Both Elisabeth Gets Her Way and voice sound.
But music has been super important for me from the beginning. As a teenager, I think it was really comforting. And if I look at the straight line to voice noise, it was at that time also that I was really comforted by female voices like Tori Amos or Kate Bush or Alanis Morissette. Like all those names at that time were really like it felt like they spoke to me directly, because they spoke in a weird poetic language. Not everything had meaning, but it felt as if it was completely heartfelt.
I'm broke, but I'm happy. I'm poor, but I'm kind. I'm short, but I'm healthy, yeah!
And so I think over the past years, music has even become more important in my work. And a lot of that has to do with Elisabeth Chojnacka, the woman, the harpsichord player around whom the performance Elisabeth Gets Her Way is built. Because I was listening to a lot of music, but contemporary music was always a type of music which I found difficult to get into, which I didn't find an entrance to. And it was by making Any Attempt Will End in Crushed Bodies and Shattered Bones, which was here 2 years ago, that I chose a work by Gorecki, Concerto for Harpsichord and Strings. Chose it also because of the context that it was made, because it was like made in the time of Solidarnosc in Poland, and it was good for the theme of the performance, which was around protests. But so I chose that work, and then I saw a video of the premiere of that work in 1980, and it was Elisabeth Chojnacka playing, and I was again like as with that video of Anna Teresa, I was also with this video I was also completely struck, and then I found out that on the score it also said written for, dedicated to Elisabeth Chojnacka. And so I started to wonder, like, but who is this? Because if it's dedicated, maybe... And then I started to do my research, and then I found out that Chojnacka wrote for her, Michael Nyman wrote for her, Ligeti wrote for her. And I was wondering, like, how come I don't know this? And how come that a lot of people don't know this? And on the other hand, what I found important was indeed this question, how come we don't know this? How come we know the things we know, and how come we don't know the things we don't know? And what are the structural issues behind that? And that has also led to voice noise. So I think that voice noise would have not been there without Elisabeth Gets Her Way, because in those both shows we talk about unknown music, treasures, hidden treasures, questioning the mechanisms that are behind the fact that this beautiful music doesn't reach a wide enough audience. When I was younger, or in the first years of my career, it was more about the bodies on stage, the diversity of bodies on stage. That I wanted to give a voice. I made a solo for a 70-year-old woman. I made a duet for a boy of 12 and a man of 26. I made a solo for a voluptuous actress, expressing that, yes, also on the dance stages we need to see a differentiation of bodies. And I think that has now developed also in this wish to change the canon. Because I do feel that with dance, and it's very narrow-minded what I'm going to say, it's very black and white, but very often there is two possibilities: or you work with a composer and you make a new music, or you work with a big master, and often these big masters are male. It's like Bach or Beethoven or Mozart or Steve Reich or Philip Glass. Like also those minimalists are also like big masters now.
even though you have a company and have so many people around you, but you continue to do solos.
Yeah, it's very different. It's a very different way. You can allow yourself to be less prepared entering the studio when you make a solo, because it's only you need to care about. While with a group, you need to become prepared. You need to have your research done before. For example, with Elisabeth Gets Her Way grew because I was still researching her while I was already making choreography on the pieces that I chose, or I still went to interview people who knew her, while for Voice Noise I made a long list of, I think, 200 songs, which then by the start of creation were narrowed down to, I think, 50. I think each creation is different, whether it's for a solo or for a group. Voice Noise has really was not easy to create, has brought me to quite some questions about my practice. And in the end, I'm extremely happy with the result, because I do feel that it's a very different work from other pieces. What it has to do is the essay by Anne Carson, which was an inspiration for this work. I learned about this essay, The Gender of Sound, it's called, by reading a book by a Norwegian writer, Ida Lødemelt-Tvedt. And in one of her texts, she talked about how she had a fight with her boyfriend, and that her boyfriend said, your voice is so annoying. And that she was really very touched by that, because she says, like, the voice is my core, and to be annoyed by my voice, what does that mean? And then she referred to the essay by Anne Carson, The Gender of Sound, which I then went to read.
Short talk on reading. Some fathers hate to read but love to take the family on trips. Some children hate trips but love to read. Funny how often these find themselves passengers in the same automobile.
There's a very strong text about how how in history the female voice, the women's voice, has been associated with death and chaos and disorder, and has been muted in very different ways. She gives an example of Greek writers who described the woman as an empty vessel with two mouths, an upper and a lower mouth, where all the rotten things come out. But she also adds in a bit of humor. She talks about Margaret Thatcher, how she took classes to sound lower in order to exert more power.
I've done a good deal of other speaking, but speaking in the House of Commons is quite different. It's a unique experience.
Just wait.
But I think which made me question my practice was that in the end of the essay, because it's clearly a very feminist essay, but at the end she goes even wider than that. And she talks about the so-called male virtue of sophrosine, of self-control, which was the Greek virtue that men had and women didn't have. And in the end of the essay, she questions, like, could there be other ways to guide or rule a society which is not ruled by the virtue of sophrosine? And what would that be? Which made me question very much my practice, because I'm quite of a kind of a control freak, and I'm a lot with numbers and patterns, and even though that I use a lot of material of my dancers, in the end things tend to be very set and very square, and so I thought, like, maybe I should open that up in this performance. So in contrast to for example, Any Attempt Will End in Crushed Bodies and Shattered Bones, which does have a lot of material from the own dancers, but which is written from A to Z. There's a lot of space here for improvisation. The input from the dancers is a lot more even than in other shows. Even there it's already a lot. I feel it's even a lot more here. It's something which I knew before the start of the creation, but I didn't know that it would take the form of improvisation and of deciding in the moment. Because I remember that the first day of the creation, I told them, I want to make a show which does not succeed if you have a bad day. And it was not like to put pressure on the dancers, but it was like for me also like a way, because I do feel that in the rest of the works, the form or the construction of the piece is so strong or so clear that it can allow for somebody having a bad day. While with voice noise, I think the dramaturgy is a lot more complex. It's not an easy show, but a very much rewarding one, I find. And so there is more weight on the shoulder of the dancers, I feel, because of them having to listen and watch deeper. I think the more the performance develops, the more improvisation there is. So I also, and the dancers the whole time on stage, and so a lot of the time they're also watching each other because there's a lot of solos happening. And watching each other and listening to the music in the hope that directed watching and listening would also direct the gaze and the ear of the audience. But so I think the show is really a practice in doing that and ends up in a really open improvisation in which I hope that their heightened awareness of watching and listening deeply for that past hour nourishes the way how they can be together on stage and how they can influence each other and make every time a beautiful brand new scene.
The purpose is also for the spectators?
Yes, for sure. I think for me that's one of the biggest challenges of theater nowadays is the amount of places where people can invest in concentration is getting less and less. We can, when we stream a series or a movie, we can press 100 times pause. When we read a book, we can put it away when we want. But an audience decides to go to see a show, and then they decide to be with their heads and body and heart for an hour and a half with what they see. And I think that is the importance of theater, because it's concentration and focus is such an important trademark of us as human species. I feel so it is important to practice that, and it is important to look further than what we know. I read about Taylor Swift that in America, Taylor Swift had received more streams than the genres of classical and jazz music together. And it says something, because I think internet can be amazing. And all the music I found is through internet for voice noise.
And actually, you just said that your formation was through the internet.
Yeah,
You saw
also.
Antes de Chojnacka
Yeah.
and everything through the
It's true.
YouTube, right?
It's very, very, very true. But the problem is the algorithms, and the problem is that we all end up that we don't put the effort to look further, but we take what comes on our line, on our timeline. I love pieces by Taylor Swift. It's not that, but it's just, how there is so much beauty in the world, and there are so much different definitions of what is good music. How come we don't search for that, or how come that it does not end up with us?
You say choreography as an exercise of democracy. And And I thought, is it possible? Not only to think about it, but to practice it.
I think yes. I think it is possible. I think it's not easy because of power relations. In the studio, choreographer dancer, that relation is not easy. Has had very problematic examples. Comes also from educations. But I do think that it is possible, and I think a lot of good steps are taken lately. But I think, yes, democratization of who do we see on stage, a democratization of how does the process work, who has what to say and who has what to decide. How can you support dancers digging or finding things? How can you bring people together? I remember talking with one of the older performers in Any Attempt who said, like, I've been always asked to join a creation because of what I'm good in. And all the people next to me were kind of good in the same things. But now I see the people I'm next to and they can't even do one pirouette, some of them. Like questioning and the insecurity of what that brings to you, questioning like, yeah, but if that's not what you want or what is not necessary, like, what am I doing here? Because that's what I can offer. So I think it's there is it's a very social. In Belgium, we say like social educational work, kind of part of the landscape, which is busy with school performances. But I think for me, like, all of my performance should be social educational. I find it important to and not in a bad way, because it can seem like it can seem very educational, but I want people to learn something. It's what I love. I'm learning like every 3, 4, 5 years I start a new language, because I just love to learn languages. And I love to learn things. I love to discover new music. I love to understand what I didn't understand 5 years ago. And so I think that's also why in the performances I always try to bring something new or something different, or why each show is different than the previous one, and why it has songs or singers which are unknown, or to offer a new experience. I have a lot of friends who came to see Elisabeth Gets Her Way with a lot of hesitation, because like the harpsichord, oh no, the harpsichord, but then come out and think like, cool, harpsichord. And that I think are very magic moments, and one of the reasons why I do it, to open and broaden perspectives. Very striking about the harpsichord is that it was almost dying, that instrument, because the piano came at the end of the 18th or 19th century, I think, and sounded louder and was a lot more easier to compete with other instruments in an orchestra. So nobody was writing for that instrument anymore. And then in the 20th century, people started to write again and started to actually kind of find a new context for that instrument. So Friedrich Prosch was also questioning, what can we learn from that instrument? Because are we as human beings also not on the verge of death and chaos? And are there no strategies to take from composers who find new ways to work with a thing that was in death row? That was the question then.